You know what? You make me sick.
I make you sick? You make me sick. Run around here fucking all these dirty ass little boys.
Yeah,
you don't want to go to school. Yeah, saw you throwing up this morning. I think your ass is pregnant.
I ain't pregnant.
Come on!
He told us everything.
Yo, ain't that them niggas right there?
Kill or be killed. Fuck man.
What?
What did the doctor say?
Why me?
It will get worse.
My God, there are too many young people leaving this earth at an early age.
Ain't nothing wrong with my property.
You need to shut your club down immediately by order of the city.
Say your heart is full of pain and confused.
For the minds of the Vision Pictures, Charm City, the most anticipated drama since The Wire. Baltimore, get ready for a new drama, Charm City. Hear his real story.
Certainly, I have sold more kilograms of heroin than any other single individual. I'm certain.
Connect Melvin to people in New York and give Melvin a good heroin connection.
Tell his true accounts of how he became the king of an heroin empire in Baltimore during the 70s.
Some millions of dollars right off the top. At some point they told him that they wanted me next.
And was ultimately framed by those in power.
They got a very corrupt police sergeant to put drugs on him.
I never thought I was going to jail. And he says, but I don't think you understand the gravity of what's happened to you here today. That there was a warrant being ready to be dropped on me to give you 120 years.
That was all manufactured, and it was on the say-so of an informant.
A gold card informant. He was going to be kidnapped as well.
They couldn't put an honest charge on him until 1975. That's the truth.
But they convicted me and sent me to the penitentiary. I'm a failure as a drug dealer. You will be too.
The documentary film by director Derek Thomas that's sure to have everyone talking. Division Pictures presents Melvin Williams' Life in the Game.
This isn't a war against drugs. This is a war against black folks.
Man, I don't know where we at. Baltimore, Maryland.
The earliest remembrance I have of the street was being a newspaper, I guess salesperson, on the corner of McMicken and Madison Avenue, 2 blocks down from where I lived. And we'd pitch quarters, and then we'd shake mixed quarters up. Maybe we'd bet $5 or $10 worth of quarters, and we'd shake them up in our hand, and then we'd form a tube, and whoever had heads would take the heads off, whoever had tails would take the tails off, and that's another form of early gambling that I invented. Then later, I saw some guys playing a game called crap. And it was so fascinating to me to see how the dice moved and how they numbered and how they would exchange money. And so I bought 3 pair of dice one day. I was around 12. And I took the 3 pair of dice home, and I bought a book called Scotty on Crap. And I learned the different odds on which number would come before 7 and which number would be difficult. And after I'd learned enough of those things, I started throwing the dice against the wall and shooting them across the carpet and shooting them across the linoleum, and each one gave a different reaction, and I continued to practice and practice until I learned how to manipulate the dice until they wouldn't throw what they were supposed to, but they would throw what I wanted them to. Then I moved out into the world and started trying to get paid for these manipulations.
Still, at a tender age, Melvin would take his self-taught gambling skills to the streets. He was green to the slick, underhanded ways of street gamblers and was in need of a mentor. One night, involved in a dirty game of craps, Melvin would discover one.
When I first went to the gambling circuit, on a particular occasion outside of the Royal Theater, one evening that there was a show and a lot of guys from on the show were out by gambling. Benny King, Slappy White, Pookie Hudson of the Spaniels, Screaming Jay Hawkins. I just stumbled up into the crowd and watched them placing bets until it finally became clear to me that, hey, I could rob this crowd. A couple of them were ridiculing me at the outset. Hey kid, what are you doing here? And so I said, well, you know, I got some money and maybe I could place a bet or two. So after they saw 20s and 50s and $100 bills, they started trying to win them. That game is where I met the guy that would be instrumental in learning all the things that I learned about gambling. I met Cherry Red Franklin. After I'd finished the school day, I would show up and he would take me to different places and teach me things about gambling and cards and crap and people and human nature.
The street life had a hold on Melvin Williams at an early age. Even a free public education wasn't much to his liking.
I was put out by a lady named Lillian Parrott. She was the principal. And the reason why is because there was a guy named Harold Seaborn. He was the vice principal. He caught me playing crap on several occasions and said, hey, this guy ain't never gonna do nothing but play crap. He was right. And so they put me out of school. And so my mother became so upset that, you know, I couldn't go to school, even though I very rarely played anything other than crap when I went anyhow. And so she took me over to City College. They gave me a test and said, hey, there ain't no way in hell we could not let him go to City College with the IQ that he's got.
An underage pool hustler.
The name Little Melvin came from how young he was when he started asserting himself as a gambler on Pennsylvania Avenue, which was kind of the 125th Street of Baltimore.
The door to the pool room was right about here, 1502. And upstairs at night, you could win $1 million if it was your night. At 13, I had amassed 100,000. At 15, I was a millionaire.
On Avenue, we had roller skating ring and all that hotel and every bar, every nightclub, there was a hotel. You could sell on the curb. White people used to be up and down the avenue because we had popular clubs like the Comedy Club, you know, where we had Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, all them people used to come down there. Sammy Davis Jr., his father and his uncle, you know. A lot of entertainment was there.
Melvin's talent for gambling would attract the attention of a Baltimore City police officer.
I'm actually too young to be in the pool room. He's supposed to run me out, but he doesn't. And he had a way of showing up at every game that I played on. What would you do if somebody never loses? I'd bet. He takes me to my mom and tells her, Mrs. Williams, do you have any idea that your son is betting large sums of money in the pool parlor? And she says to him, how much does he have as we speak? And so he says, I think he's got somewhere around 10,000. She said, well, I only gave him 3 this morning.
His mother said, it was in one of the police reports, but he always wins. How can I tell him to stop? He always wins. Melvin took particular pride in that police report.
Under proper mentorship, Melvin would grow wise to the streets. His gambling prowess would become stuff of legend.
He was a remarkable gambler. He was known for his billiards, and he was known for his dice game.
And his reputation for being a wealthy avenue sportsman would attract unwelcomed attention.
The town had begun to attract stick-up men. During that era, there came some times when we were gambling around on Pennsylvania Avenue, and the list of gamblers was so significant as men around town having millions of dollars and having gambling events where maybe millions changed hands. And so in these stick-up men coming from different parts of the world, and some of them being sent for, and we don't know who sent for them just yet, but there's speculation still today as to who was the senders and who was the receivers. But nonetheless, there came a need for people to have weapons on them to protect the things that they had, their booty and the large sums of money that you had to have on you, because if a game took place and you didn't have cash on you on the spot, by the time you went home and came back, somebody might have won $150,000, $250,000, $1 million. It's hard to know how long a game would last, so you had to come ready to gamble.
And come ready he did. As Melvin's winnings increased, so did his need for protection.
There came a need for Melvin to have a nickel-plated .45 on his person at all times.
Melvin's pistol would ignite a conflict with another underworld figure, Baltimore's number czar, Willie Adams.
The pistol went off purely by accident. I meant no disrespect to him. What fool would allow a .45 to go off in a phone booth that nearly blowed his groin out? But this man received it personal, as I understood years later, that a weapon shouldn't go off in his building, and it did. And a personal friend of mine by the name of Charles Dixon told me the day after my weapon went off in his building that he wanted me to never enter his building again. I honored that. But at the time that these stick-up men were moving about the city, it was said that he was going to be kidnapped as well. No stick-up man is going to come and take $200,000 and $300,000 from you and let you live. No stick-up man that I could enventure. You were dealing with a life struggle if some of those guys came and got the drop on you. But know this about those stick-up men. They found every one of them dead. Those that came from different parts of New Jersey, those that came from different parts of New Mexico, those that came from Kentucky, they found all of them in all different parts of the city with gunshots in the neck, in the ear, and in the back of the head, and some straggled across each other. It was a time that being a stick-up man wasn't the smart thing to be.
On 2 consecutive Tuesdays, Melvin would hit the number.
Back to back. And hit it on a $100 bet. So this would have been $50,000, $60,000 a bet.
But he would win more than money. He would strike the mother lode.
I had hit the number with Julius, the Lord Salisbury, the Jewish boss of bosses.
Salisbury had great influence in the numbers game, which was incredibly lucrative before the state got into the lottery business in the 70s.
And a guy by the name of Bassey, his main man, met us at the door and told everybody else that they could sit out in the lobby and enjoy themselves and have what they wanted to drink. And he told me, Melvin, you follow me and come in the back. And I was taken in the back, and that was the first time that I shook hands with Julius, the Lord Salisbury. A deep, eye-penetrating man who shook my hand and said, you are just the luckiest young person that I have met in the last month or so. And I says, yeah, and if you don't leave my numbers alone, I'm gonna break you. He said, let me be perfectly honest with you. You have hit the number at a time that is uncomfortable to me, and your $100 hit is really insignificant to me. But because so many people are trail betting your number came to 1,000. So I had a $1,000 number hit 2 Tuesdays in a row. So I had to pay out somewhere close to $1 million. I'm not paying you tonight because I think that in our handshake, I can ensure you that your money is coming and I'll pay you sometime in the upcoming future. But I paid all of the other people that trail betted your number. And I asked him, did I pass post you? He says, no. Pass post means that you got a line on the first 2 numbers and bet all of the last 10 numbers down the line. Like if 541 was the number that I found out, the first 2 numbers was a 5 and a 4, and I bet 541, 542, 543, 544. That's called pass posting. In that I didn't pass post, he says, no, there was no passport post. I'm going to pay you every dime. It'll be a few minutes, and I'll pay you. He said, feel free to come down here and sit around and have a drink or do whatever it is that you want. Any day that you want. Come back to the office and make yourself at home. And so I took him up on that. And I went down on countless occasions, and I sat and I listened to him, and I found that he played a game called Millions and Shingaboo, card games. And so I asked him how they went, and he explained it to me, and in my explaining to him what I did and him explaining to me a few things that he did, we established a relationship, and I showed him a few things about cards and gambling, and he showed me a few things about the world and being a man. And there came a time that I told him some things about Shingaboo and millions that would allow him to win all the time. And he says, I don't believe it. And I says, I would never lie to you. If I tell you something, believe it. And he said, I'll never say that to you again. And he never did. And I showed him some things about millions and Shingaboo, where every time he played thereafter, he did just that, he won. And so there came a time that on one morning, all of the bosses are standing around, and some Italian was standing around to go to a game, and in their going to this game, somebody was going to drive him. And he said to those people waiting to drive him, I don't want none of y'all to take me anyplace. My godson's gonna drive me. So I'm standing there, so I'm waiting to see where the godson comes from. And he repeats, my godson Melvin's gonna drive me, and you could have bought me for $1.25. To hear this Jewish boss call me his godson, that I had no preparation for, no prior knowledge of, and all of these gangster Italians and Jews standing around waiting to drive him someplace. And you could have, I mean, my knees damn near gave out on me.
Over time, Melvin would develop a close bond with Salisbury that would prove to be beneficial to Salisbury as well.
There came a day when we were down on the block, and I had gone up to a place we used to eat lunch at across from the Villanova nightclub. And it was like a deli, real good food. And I heard somebody say, I wonder whose ass he's gonna kiss. The Jew is to run out of money. And so I'm waiting for a name to come up, and you know, it was a kind of close-knit type of group of people. I just never thought that they had that kind of deceit and trash talking in the absence of a man around. But I'm saying to myself, hey, that only happens up on Pennsylvania Avenue, where I was from, in the black community. But ultimately, everybody does that. Every nationality does that when guys are jealous of things that you have, or jealous of the prestige that you have. And so ultimately one of them said, well, Jules, you know, he's always professed to have so much money. He's going to have to make some big adjustments real quick, because I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and we're going to run this, and we're just going to have to tell him, unless he kisses somebody's ass, it's going to be like this and like that and like so and so from now on. And so I couldn't wait to get back down to the Oasis Club to tell him, hey, look, your name was being kicked around like dirt a little while ago, and in the few times that I've been down here, I never saw or presumed that these two people would have this kind of conversation about you and ignore that I'm there and just go on and on and on. And so they expressed something that you had owed somebody some $350,000, and they were concerned with whose ass you were going to kiss, this, thus, and so forth. And the third, and I said, wow, I got to at least make him aware of this. And my question to you is, if you had $350,000, would you let those two people be the first persons that you dealt with? He said, without a doubt. He said, but I couldn't accept $350 from anybody that wasn't a man. Not $350,000, $350. I said, that's my kind of man. I said, well, I'm gonna run uptown and I'll be back. I'm gonna go and do a couple of things. He says, all right. So I must have came back in a heartbeat, and I brought $350 with me. And I says, look in that bag and tell me what you think. He looked in the bag. He says, how much is this? I said, $350. Is this for me? I said, without a doubt. He said, let's go up the street. And we came up the street, and he called two guys, and they went down in the basement, and he came back up. I didn't go, and when he came back up, he said, come on, let's go down the Oasis where the air's fresh. Like it was rotten in there. And at least we don't have to worry about whose ass the Jew's gonna kiss. The Jew don't kiss ass. And we went back to the Oasis and laughed and joked for a few minutes. And the first time he hugged me, said, I'll see you soon. Be safe. And I left. Maybe as much as another month would pass, and he called me one Sunday and said, don't go nowhere Monday early. And I said, okay. And so he called me Monday early and said, come on down, I want to see you for something. Naturally, I'm in the car and I'm down there in a heartbeat. He gets out of his car and comes over to mine, and he brings a briefcase. And in the briefcase, he says, every dime that I owe you is in there. Take it home. Take it wherever you're gonna take it. Be safe. And I did just that.
To this day, Melvin acknowledges Salisbury as a true friend and somebody that he holds in high regard. Salisbury later disappeared too. He ran on appeal bond in 1970. He's never been seen since. The rumor is he passed away in Israel several years ago, back in the 90s.
At times, life in the game will offer some hard lessons for Melvin Williams, but the one about friendship and loyalty would become a recurring nightmare.
The guy that came back from New York to put me in the penitentiary was a guy that I watched a lot of my life on Pennsylvania Avenue. His name was Joe Louis Miles, came from Alabama. Big, good-looking, dark-skinned boy that had his way just about everywhere he stopped. He misposted a number, and the number was owned by some tough guys. And he had to leave to go to New York. The night that he had to go, I gave him $3,000 out of $5 that I had in my pocket, and he went to New York. It didn't take him but a minute in New York before he had established this position, having befriended a Spanish guy's woman who had just gone to the penitentiary. And he established some kind of narcotic connection, and within minutes he had it going on. He had a couple of million from what I gathered, and every kind of unusual automobile known to man. And he called me one day and said, Melvin, catch a plane, and come up here. Don't drive, don't bring no money, just catch a plane and come up here. And I caught a plane and he met me at the airport in a limousine with 2 women that were just flat out gorgeous, and told me that he had amassed some millions of dollars and that he remembered what kind of money he had the night that he had to leave, and how grateful he was to what I gave him. On that occasion, he must have spent $50,000 on me easily. And I had to take the things that I had back home in a truck. I couldn't put them back. I couldn't get back on the plane. Naturally, he said, I got so many avenues available to me. If you want to come here and live, I can put you wherever you want to be. You can do this, you can do that. And I asked him, how are you coming about these kinds of monies? And he says, I am the man. I control all of the cocaine and all of the heroin that go into this part of the city. And it's something that you need to consider, because you will generate this kind of money, within a heartbeat. And if you wanted to run Baltimore, I could situate you so that nobody could do anything outside of getting your permission. And that was his statement to me, and I heard it. There came a time when on, I think it was called the East River Drive, he was arrested by a DEA squad. I think he had $1 million in cash in the trunk of his car, and from what I was told, he had 4 kilograms of heroin underneath of his seat, getting ready to make a delivery or a drop or something, and he was busted. And upon being propositioned by the DEA to either go to the penitentiary and leave all of these things that he had, he chose to become an informant, a rep. We never found that out right off the top. But in this relationship that we had established, at some point they told him that they wanted me next. And he was sent here back to Baltimore, at which time his intent was to send me to the penitentiary. I and everybody else around the state became aware that this man was now an informant, a gold card informant. And when he showed up here to do what he did to me, the only reason why I went to the Avenue Lounge to meet him is because I just didn't believe that he was going to do it to me. I knew he was a rat, but I thought our relationship was such that this rat wouldn't do it to me. The thing that I learned from that scenario is that a rat is not a rat because he chooses to be. A rat is a rat because that's his nature. A rat will not only do what he's told, a rat will improvise, not tell what he's fabricating to tell. He'll tell whatever he's told to tell. He's that frightened of the penitentiary. At the Avenue Bar, apparently now knowing many years later, he had placed some heroin in the bathroom. And upon my meeting him, sitting at the counter, talking with him, he showed me some counterfeit money and asked me what my thought was on it, and I told him that I had no knowledge of this field of endeavor and that I never chose to get outside of my field. He put the counterfeit money back in his pocket, went into the bathroom and came out, and I left and walked down the street under the thought that I was right, that he hadn't done anything to me, that he didn't attempt to do anything to me. The next week, I was told by some police that there was a warrant being ready to be dropped on me for a sale that I made in the Avenue Bar. And I'm mystified, a sale in the Avenue Bar. Well, what ultimately happened is he turned in a package to the DEA that he claimed to have gotten from me. His fingerprints are on the inside of this sealed package. He gives it to the DEA, and they allowed me to walk back down the street where they were claiming that I gave him $700 cash for this package. But nobody never stopped me to take this counterfeit money off of me. There came a morning that I look out the window and I see some police officers circling the block. They're in unmarked cars, but their mannerism, you know, I'm a street guy, it's clear to me they cops. So I called my attorney, Milton Allen, and I'd say to him, hey Milton, I'd like you to become conscious of that there's a bunch of cops moving around my neighborhood. I don't have a clue as what's up. He asked me two things. Do you have any weapons? I says, no. Do you have any narcotics? I says, no. He said, then go to the pool room and win like you seem to do all the time. When I backed out and went up Mosier and turned on Division and went to the corner of Pennsylvania and McMicken, and I step out on this side, and he rushed me and act like he hit me with his right hand and jammed his fist down in my pocket. One rogue cop put 16 pills of narcotics in my pocket. And the same cop, this Sergeant Winnicky, goes to my car that has now been searched by 3 other officers, and he finds narcotics in my car.
Despite Melvin Williams' pending trial, his popularity and influence in the community would cause city officials to seek out his help as a result of the Martin Luther King assassination.
A person who espoused nonviolence, who was making progress through nonviolence, when he was killed violently, something inside of us as a people collectively snapped.
Pennsylvania Avenue was on fire. North Avenue, many stores were on fire. There was just a sense of anarchy that existed where people would literally all throughout the streets, those who weren't afraid, and there was looting going on, and there was a lot of things going on.
I look out my window, my greatest astonishment, when I look out the window, I see a barrage or look like a platoon of army folks, and standing at my door is a general. They establish, I guess, some kind of need or thought that they need me to say certain things to the African American community.
So the colonel at the time, Gelston, said, you know, everybody wear a vest. We need you to wear a vest. So Melvin said, no, don't give me the vest. I don't need it. He said, where I'm going, nobody's going to shoot me. Give it to Senator Mitchell.
Melvin Williams' cooperation with officials to save the city displayed a command of the people that sparked a fearful response from those in power.
Any nigger that could stop a riot could start one. We need to put him in the penitentiary. Now, I got that information from Julius the Lord Salisbury.
This did not work to his advantage because once it became known and once he was on the front page of the News American for having done so, in a picture standing next to General Gelston, although unidentified, nobody from the News American knew who they had in the photo. But once it became known to the police, the argument from the police was, if he can stop a riot, he can start a riot.
Anybody with the type of power that he had to go into different communities and stop the type of violence and carnage that was going on at that time, that was too much power for somebody like Melvin Williams, particularly with the people at the time who were planning the future of the city, who wanted to be at the crossroads of a Baltimore that was changing. And you would have thought doing something like that would have earned him a certain amount of credibility with the legal system and avoided what potentially happened to him, but it didn't.
And the penitentiary is where Melvin Williams would go on what some believed to be suspect charges.
I never thought I was going to jail. In everything about me, when I went to court that morning, I had a cigar in my pocket like Red Auerbach.
They got a very corrupt police sergeant to put drugs on him. I interviewed those agents who acknowledged that they fabricated the probable cause. You know, a couple of them actually said so to me. They were no longer on the force at the time, and one of them had actually been thrown off the force, and I reached him. He was a sanitation worker in Philly. And I spoke with him and interviewed him, and he said, no, we didn't, all the probable cause about Melvin making a hand-to-hand, the reason they had to go into his pockets in the later arrest, that was all manufactured. And it was on the say-so of an informant who was a real snake, who later himself would be killed. He was killed in New Orleans. in 1973, a guy named Joe Miles.
It was my thought that this case had nothing to do with right. The cop that put the narcotics in my pocket couldn't even show up in the courthouse.
By that time, I think no judge would allow him to testify in court.
I remember Sergeant Winnicky. He was not present at the trial.
Sergeant Lawrence Winnicky killed himself in his basement 1 month after I was sent to the penitentiary on the bogus charge that he placed narcotics in my pocket.
It was clear from the whole manner in which the case was presented, it was a dirty case.
Up to the point of his arrest, Melvin Williams maintains that he hadn't sold any drugs and that Baltimore City made him into a drug dealer.
They couldn't put an honest charge on him until 1975. That's the truth.
But they convicted me and sent me to the penitentiary.
After serving 3 of his 12-year sentence, falsely accused Melvin Williams came home, infuriated about what had been done to him.
I came home with every intent of being the world's best drug dealer. I had been destroyed. I had been taken away like Muhammad Ali. I had been taken out the game at the top of my game for no reason at all. My theory was like Rambo, they drew first blood.
On some level, that's understandable. It certainly would make me angry whether I was guilty or not, whether I was a drug dealer or not. If they manufactured the evidence, if they didn't play by the rules, if, as Melvin always likes to say, if there was shit in their blood, or shit in the blood of the case, as he likes to say, it would make me angry as hell.
I wanted to show those persons that even with what you want me to be, I'll be bigger and better than anybody thus far in this state, or any state for that matter. And I set out to be a world-class drug dealer, smuggler, you name it.
When Melvin Williams was released from prison, his relationship with Salisbury would prove to be valuable.
That's where Melvin got his drug connect. That while Salisbury was not involved with drugs, he knew people who were. He knew that he could connect Melvin to people in New York, and give Melvin a good heroin connection with the mafia.
I was told to be someplace in another part of the world. I honored that being told, and I showed up at this other part of the world at a meeting with a lot of people from another nationality. I was the only person there that looked like me. I was told to come into an area that everybody in there looked like, if they were, as I said before, if they were supposed to be gangsters, that's who they looked like. The guy that was in charge slit a package open and took a smidget of what was in it, a substance that was in it. Another person brought him a little vial that looked like water because the substance was clear. My presumption as we speak is that it was acid. What was in the package in the powder form was dumped into the vial with the liquid form, and it was shaken and it turned blue-black. He said, "This is the substance that I bring to the table. I've got 3,222 of these. I charge $75,000 a pop, and you, Melvin, will be the first to choose today." I didn't know then that first choice meant that in the event that I wanted, I could have accepted the whole 3,222 of them. That would have been my option. Instead, like an idiot, I said, I have $225,000 in this briefcase, give me 3 of them. And he immediately grabbed the money and balled it up and stuck it back down in the briefcase and said, "I don't mean to offend you, because everyone here knows that you're the only martial artist in the building." Everybody bust out laughing. And he says, "But I don't think you understand the gravity of what's happened to you here today." And I says, "No, tell me." He says, "You have the option to pick as many of these as you choose. Cost you nothing. Return with the money whenever you're ready to do again or move again. Give me 2 streets that cross anywhere in America, and I'll make that package show up there, I promise. I gave him 2 streets that cross in East Baltimore because I live in West Baltimore. And as the rumor, that old rumor has it, you don't defecate where you eat. The package showed up true to form in a matter of hours to the 2 streets that crossed. And as I've said before, the game began.
Known for his discipline,
I've never had a cigarette, a joint, an aspirin, a beer, a cup of coffee, a glass of eggnog, a glass of wine, a blow, a hit, a joint. I've never experienced high in my life.
Melvin never strayed from his 4 rules of surviving in the game.
All strangers are police. All phones are tapped. If for any reason the package and the pistol are together on the same premise, you shouldn't be buying that to start with. You should never bust the package open or tamper with it until you're absolutely certain that what you're supposed to have is what you got.
Following his 4 rules, Melvin saw success as a heroin dealer.
We are the #1 city in the country in heroin use.
They would talk about how much money there would be on a Friday night on Pennsylvania Avenue. Money for crap games, money for the clubs, money for every other distraction. It was not a poor city when the factories were humming. Baltimore came out of the 60s with an army of narcotics users.
And it's been sold in many quantities in other cities.
Other cities that are industrial, that are not on that I-95 axis, don't have the rates of drug abuse.
But what is it about here that it just remains such a staple, and not crack, and not, cocaine, but heroin?
Some of them let the children go out and sell drugs, and they was a dope thing. Long they got children go out there and sell the dope and bring their money back. They wouldn't care. They didn't try to raise their children properly back in the 70s. So that's when it turned over.
There's something about the euphoria of narcotics that is profound. Otherwise, people would not be chasing it the way they do. There's something in the chemistry and what it does to the brain that sets up an incredible battle.
At the age of 15, I'm in the pool, and I was influenced by a guy named Slouch. He said, "Man, I can get you something feeling better." So he said, "You have $1?" I said, "Yeah, I have $1." So I gave him $1. He went and got a pill. We went down Joe Hanson Street in this here house, and we shot this dollar pill, me and him. And I liked the effects of it. And from that day on, I used to sell myself and wait for my aunt to get off and work to get a couple $2 for it. And me and him would go get 2 pills. And before I knew it, the truant officer started coming to my house because I was too young to be out of school. So I ducked until I turned 16. I ain't looking back till I got to 20 years.
That's right. I'm certain that I have sold more kilograms of heroin in Maryland than any other single individual. I'm certain of that. So I got $125,000 worth of profit every time I sold one. And I could get them as fast as you all could breathe. So a couple of $100 million later, I'm praising God.
He would wash little Melvin black Maserati. Yes, I would wash a father 735 BMW. You hear me?
It was definitely known that they didn't count the money sometimes. They used to weigh it.
Duffel bags of money that I just lay up in the kitchen or on the floor in the living room and dump it out on the rug and just put packs of $100 bills in bags and then throw it in the duffel bag and throw it on the side.
But with success comes a heavy price.
There was one guy that I had met while we were confined. He was fascinated by the drug distribution life, fascinated. And I told him on a couple of occasions, you don't have what it takes to be a drug dealer. First, you have to have an unusual or an uncanny spirit of discernment to let you know what's going on in the head of the other guy, the opposition. And second, you gotta be so disciplined that you don't have none of those vices that will allow you to be your own best customer. I got him a job that allowed him to earn, I guess, $75,000 annually, and told him, whatever you do, do not become involved in the drug business. I don't perceive you got what it takes. Nonetheless, he chose a part of the city to live in and to deal in. And you've heard me say already before, you don't defecate where you eat. Well, he violated that rule right off the top. And it came a point in time when the agents ran in his house and dogged him and his lady, and I couldn't believe when I was told up front that somebody on this case that they're trying to lock you into is going to tell accidentally. He's not going to tell deliberately. He's going to slip and say something that the U.S. attorney is going to use to give you 120 years, 7 sales, and 1 conspiracy. This person went around to try to get my mother on tape. It became clear that they, in fact, were starting to circle the wagons.
And circle they did, with the help of one of Melvin's lieutenants. He would break one of Melvin's cardinal rules of the game, selling drugs to an undercover federal narcotics agent. Melvin would be later implicated through tape conversations and would receive 15 years.
You're somewhere in the penitentiary trying to imagine how could anybody that has spent an hour around me in his life growing up could possibly sell something of a controlled substance to a total stranger. That defies logic.
Williams served 5 years and was paroled in 1979. A more cautious Melvin came home with his empire still intact. Now insulated by trusted lieutenants, his organization was stronger than ever, and it was back to business. He only communicated with top lieutenants through a complex beeper code, with area phone booths serving as points of contact. On June 14, 1983, 2 men, Walter Robertson and an associate, attempted to buy drugs from an undercover federal narcotics agent in Virginia. The men claimed to have received $100,000 in buy money from Melvin. On December 5, 1984, police raided Melvin Williams' home. In court, Melvin's attorney contested that he had no knowledge of the men's actions, but the jury found him guilty, and he received a 24-year sentence. But Williams still proclaims that former Baltimore City Police Detective Ed Burns got it wrong.
Ed Burns was one of the cops that chased me for forever, that later became one of the directors of The Wire. And wherever you at, Ed, today, it will become crystal clear to you one more time that Walter, in his supposed tricky type of demeanor that he's supposed to have, made an ass of all of us one more time with this 100,000, because as I've told you on several occasions since that day, the cocaine that was claimed that I gave him 100,000 to go 4 kilos, to go buy 4 kilos, cost me 8,000 a pop. Why would anybody with any common sense give somebody 100,000 to go pay 25,000 a key for something that he could produce for 8? But it's water under the dam now. The sentence has been served.
Melvin's career as the heroin king of Baltimore has been nothing short of tumultuous. He didn't have to serve a life sentence, but he contends true gangsters never snitch.
And Melvin, if you know anything about him, Melvin never, ever said a word at any point in his career to the police about anyone.
I believe that if a guy's got enough nerve to take the money, he's supposed to take everything else.
I have served 1/3 of every sentence that I've ever had, which is the reason why I'm here today. I served 26 and a half years in federal penitentiaries when somebody died at least once a week.
It's only 2 days in the penitentiary. The day you go in and the day you come out. All the rest just disappears.
I was in Terre Haute, which is the gladiator school of the federal system. As I'm searching through this Bible and I can't find anything, with the intent to go and kill this guy, a voice says, I'm God. And my knees started to shake. And my hands started to tremble. And tears started to run down my eyes.
It became clear to me that in all of these wars that I've been in, that a God was with me on just about every occasion. Whether I've ever been arrested and indicted for having something to do with somebody's demise, no, I have not. And all I can say is, thank God.
While serving his sentence, Melvin makes a startling revelation.
It took one day when I wasn't angry to turn around and look back at all of the federal penitentiaries that I had been in and collectively look to see that nobody other than me was in there. Everybody that filled the place up looked like me. And so I said to myself, hey, wait a minute. I know some white folks break the law in America. Federal law. But ain't none of them in here. This isn't a war against drugs. This is a war against black folks.
Inner city neighborhoods across America have become sore pits of violence and drug trafficking, in which some believe rap music is the cause.
I have an opinion that there's violence in our community. And the poetry is not, it's a reflection of it, but I don't think it's the creator of it. And I think that a lot of times we talk about the gangster in rap or whatever, and we don't talk about the gangster attitude our government has, the gangster attitude that we watch on television all day, in the video games, in all kinds of entertainment, and in our lives in general. The thing that we glorify, the thing that we uplift. You know, and I think a lot of times the rappers will tell you the end result is bad. I think they don't glorify as much as they describe.
Being a public policymaker as I was, I know, and I've told people this over and over again, I can take a community in Howard County where you have $150,000 income and above, a community, give it to me for 6 months, and through public policy I can turn into a ghetto. If you introduce drugs or any type of external element into that whole picture, you now have that young person getting involved in this legal activity because now it's open to him.
Melvin Williams' hard life in the streets has been the fodder for books and television shows.
I said, you sound like a deacon. And then he went on and said he plays a role on The Wire as the deacon. And I said, you look like a deacon. He went to express to me that, well, you know, I've done some things.
David Simon came to the Lewisburg Penitentiary, and I'm still mystified how he was able to convince the warden to let him bring a camera in there.
We requested from the Bureau of Prisons whether it would be possible to take a photograph of Mr. Williams, and they allowed it.
But he taped and made conversation with me over 5 days.
As a result, a lot of what Mr. Williams told me, I never used, because it was embargoed as per the indictment that never came. But some things he put on the record and I used.
It was a little different to see him playing the deacon, but I could actually see him being a leader on the positive side, just like he is now. A lot of these young people, they have heard of some of our reputations, and they've heard about certain things that we've done in the past. So there's a bit of what you call street credibility.
I can go in these neighborhoods because I've been a part of these neighborhoods. I can go in these neighborhoods because I'm not afraid of aggression. I was the destroying factor of these neighborhoods. So why can't I come back and be the developing factor of these neighborhoods? At one time I was the problem, this time I'm gonna be the solution.
He carries it exactly like that. He is not pretense. He is exactly what you see. He's not gonna change on you to try to please you or to try to get to your good graces. And that's what a lot of these young boys respect is. They heard about who little Melvin was. They see him now and as he is, and he still carries that character. He's not doing the things he used to do, but the character of a man that they remember is who he is.
If more of y'all respected the next guy, and you want for him what you want for yourself, then you don't kill each other.
I don't know if the young guys who are out there banging now in the corners are going to listen to a guy like Melvin. You know, his name still does ring out. Even guys who, you know, he could walk up to a guy who wouldn't recognize him now. Some 16-year-old would not even know that was Melvin Williams walking towards him. But the name Little Melvin has a mythical standing in Baltimore.
I like the story on American Gangster too. Love that. Love that. That's respect right there. You heard it.
Whether it's put to meaningful and worthy use or whether it's misused, that's kind of up to Melvin.
Today, Melvin Williams is using his life as a message.
I'm a failure as a drug dealer. You will be too. They're gonna catch you. When you get off of that bus 1,000 miles away from home, one guy wants your shirt, another guy wants your shoes, another guy wants a kiss. You the last guy that's gotten there. Now you fresh meat. Been watching you since you got off the bus. And you got one or two things to worry about. Whether you're alive or dead when the baby's delivered, but we gonna have this baby. And we ain't gonna do this tonight. We're gonna do this every night. And if you speak to another man when I see you, until I leave here, I'll kill you, I promise you.
There's no denying that Melvin Williams' drug trade heavily affected Baltimore in the 70s and early 80s.
He himself will tell you, I've done a lot of damage.
And so I'm trying to, as best I can, with the bad legacy that I've left them, to tell them, kid, don't do as I did. Try to do as I say. We stopped trying to assassinate each other because he got on a blue shirt and you got on, the hell, who cares about a blue and a red shirt when both of y'all got the same kind of skin?
Right.
It's hard to try to be the message that you send. But that's the message that I'm sending to him.
I used to shoot up
okay.
dope and coke. I had been locked up for 90 days and I got urged now. What can you suggest that I did?
Try to defeat it. Don't put nothing in you that you don't need.
But when asked if he's remorseful,
I have no remorse. And the reason why is because I didn't put the first 16 pills in my pocket and nobody put them in yours. And if somebody ever put 16 pills in your pocket, you'd be able to understand what I felt.
How people take that, I have no idea. I mean, you can misuse that kind of charisma, and he has, or you can turn it around and try to harness it for something better. And I know he has, at points, tried to do that. Which is the real Melvin? Which Melvin will prevail? You know, I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see.
The only thing that I can truly tell you about life in the game is if you're in, get out. These young guys are sharp. They pretty much know what's real. But I don't want them to get any remote idea that this has been fun and that I've won. What I will have done, I will have gotten close to winning, is if I can convince them, enough of them, not to repeat what I've done. My intent is to make crystal clear that all of the outcomes in street game involvement are bad ones. Maybe not immediately, but they all turn out to the detriment of the player, especially when he looks like us.
Growing up in Baltimore, Marcel Humphrey was born to a middle-class family that nurtured his entrepreneurial aspiration at an early age. And by 15, his life would take a devastating turn with the death of his mother and father. Marcel was in turmoil. A loving grandmother would help him regain his life back, but the road was tough and he struggled through school. While in college, Marcel's entrepreneurial spirit would resurface as he took his financial aid refund check and bought his first property, and later sold it for $25K. His witty business instincts would lead Marcel to his first wholesale deal, 12 properties with no money down and no credit. His net profits, $34,000. The wholesale kid was born. Marcel left the 9-to-5 rat race for good. The future was full of promise. Marcel went on to control over $5 million in real estate, joining a horde of real estate entrepreneurs around the country making huge profits. However, once again, devastation would loom just ahead. In 2007, an unscrupulous contractor would walk out on him and his business partner, leaving them with over $1 million of real estate debt, right in the middle of the worst recession of the 21st century.
Bankers found people to lend to who were literally flat broke.
Are you predicting a crash? With a near impossible obstacle to overcome, Marcel would use his witty business instincts, combined with his experience and never give up attitude, to pull through. He began teaching people his hard-learned secrets of how to make money out of thin air, wholesaling real estate with no money, no credit, and no experience. It doesn't matter who you are, you can join the Flop to Flip Nation.